The clay court at the French Open can either be a dream maker or a dream crusher. From tear-inducing upsets to screaming matches with cameramen, these are the most insane moments in French Open history. Did you know that the infamous clay court at Roland Garros is actually not made of clay? It's made of limestone. Someone should let Rafael Nadal know about this. He is widely regarded as the king of clay.
Me, Roger Novak, we achieved things that probably we never expected.
However, in the fourth round of 2009's French Open, the king of limestone, clay, battled an unexpected challenger to his throne, Sweden's Robin Soderling, who was a relative nobody when compared to Nadal. And prior to the shocking match with Soderling in the French Open final, Nadal had already added 4 Musketeers trophies to his collection and was an insane 31-0 at Roland Garros. How do you say the GOAT in French? I think it's Nadal. The two had almost met a month earlier on clay. That match didn't go very well for the Swede. Soderling only managed to win 1 game during the entire match. Needless to say, betting was overwhelmingly in favor of Nadal. But on this day, Soderling was hellbent on upsetting the throne. The dude played like he was blessed by the tennis gods themselves. Soderling blasted 61 winners by Nadal. Before this match, you couldn't fire a bullet past Nadal in France. The king of clay was dethroned in a 4-set shocker. The entire tennis world's jaws were collectively dropped. But don't shed a tear just yet for the fallen king. Nadal got his revenge in the final the following year against Soderling. Nadal smashed him in 3 sets. Long live the king! Speaking of smashing things, look no further than infamous hothead John McEnroe. This next crazy moment is brought to you by cameramen. Cameramen, pissing John McEnroe off since 1979. The year was 1984, when John McEnroe finally learned how to win on clay, and he was playing the best tennis of his career. He was on a 42-match winning streak before facing off with Ivan Lendl in the French Open final, and it looked as though McEnroe would get his 43rd win in a row after winning 2 sets in under 20 minutes. You heard that right, 20 minutes. Lendl had absolutely no answers for McEnroe's unstoppable serve and volley game. Or did he? At the end of the 3rd set, Lendl began using more topspin lobs and cross-court backhand passing shots. It seemed to be working. McEnroe was beginning to tire and showed signs of frustration. Classic McEnroe. Then, out of nowhere, with the 3rd set tied at 1-1, a pissed-off McEnroe stormed towards the cameraman, grabbed his headset, screamed into it, and then threw it aside. Talk about your all-time hissy fits. Not only did the bizarre outburst seem to break McEnroe completely, it put the crowd squarely on Lendl's side. Spectators began hooting and hollering at McEnroe every chance they got. Lendl seemed energized by the incident and went on to win the match. Here's the worst part for McEnroe. Lendl would win 2 more French Opens. McEnroe never even caught wind of a French Open final again. McEnroe admitted later in life that the loss to Lendl easily was his most bitter defeat. But no apologies were ever made to the cameraman by McEnroe. Apologies can be tough for professional athletes, especially when your own mother has to convince you to do it. Can you guess who threw shade at Steffi Graf before facing off against her in the 1999 French Open final? She called her old and past her prime. It was then 18-year-old Martina Hingis, and let's just say, she ate her words. A whole mouthful, actually. Like McEnroe, Hingis cruised to a 2-0 set lead and was primed to take home the trophy. Then came an out-of-bounds call that Hingis took exception to. Such an exception that Hingis crossed over on the Graf side of the court to argue the call. That's a big no-no. Not only did the violation cause Hingis a penalty point, it also brought on the wrath of the crowd. Hingis was enemy number 1 to the fans in attendance. For the remainder of the match, fans chanted Steffi's name in unison and booed and jeered Hingis. Graf dominated dominated the third set. It was a real Rudy moment. Then at match point of the 8th game, Hingis delivered a desperate underhand serve to try and stay alive. It worked, but when Hingis attempted another underhand serve on Graf's second match point, she sent the serve out of bounds. Hingis's trickery not only didn't work, she sent the crowd into a fury as she protested the out of bounds call. You'd think she'd learn from the first time. Graf eventually finished Hingis off. A distraught Hingis abruptly left the court in tears to the sound of thousands of people booing. Hingis pulled a Detroit Pistons on Graf and left without shaking hands. That's cold. Martina's own mother had to convince the youngster to return for the award ceremony. Mama Hingis to the rescue. Graf officially retired from the sport 2 months later. What a bonkers way to finish your career at the French Open. And what a faux pas for Hingis. To borrow a phrase from the French, of course. Speaking of crazy underhand serves, how about an underhand serve that actually worked? It was 1989, and Ivan Lendl was crushing opponents en route to the French Open final. Standing in the way of Lendl was 17-year-old Michael Chang, all 5'9", 160 pounds of him. Fans and critics had all but handed the trophy to Lendl. What ensued is one of the craziest matches in the history of the French Open. Lendl owned Chang in the first 2 sets, but after Chang clawed back and won the third set, Lendl started getting pissed. He complained so much that it cost him a penalty point and the 4th set. It was just about that time after the 4th set that Chang started cramping hard. The kid could barely move. Just as he was about to reach the umpire's chair to forfeit, something inside of him said, "Not today." He fought on, limping and lobbing his way around the court. And in the most important moment of the match, Chang dropped the most insane underhand serve in French Open history. The gutsy move won Chang the point and eventually the match, and cemented Chang into tennis lore as one of the grittiest players to ever hold a racket. Yannick Noah knows all about rackets. The Frenchman was the last player to win a Grand Slam title using a wooden racket. If that doesn't ring a bell, he is the father of former NBA All-Star Joakim Noah, and like father, like son. Yannick was a fan favorite for his charismatic personality and on-court antics, and in the 1983 French Open final, Noah captured the French fans with his energy and flamboyant shot-making. French fans had been starving for a native champion. They hadn't had one in 37 years. His opponent, Mats Wilander, told reporters after the match that he knew he was going to lose to Noah within the first 10 minutes. And Wilander was absolutely right. Noah was on fire. Noah captured the crown for his country in 3 straight sets. When the final point was scored, Noah rushed over to his father, Zachary, and leapt into his arms. And then, like it was written for a movie, the fans stormed the court to join the celebration. It was a scene of pure nationalistic joy. It had been 37 years since the French watched one of their own become a champion, and there has not been another champion for the French since. So from tear-inducing upsets to screaming matches, those were the most insane moments in French Open history.